Jeremy.
Call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Please remember to silence your cell phones, and welcome to tonight's meeting. First item on the agenda is citizen concerns on items not already on the agenda, and the first one is mine. I will read from a portion of Article 5, Section 8 of our bylaws, which states, "A member or any elected official of the county shall address the chairperson and confine their remarks to the question before the board, and shall be respectful of other elected officials and avoid referencing or questioning the motives of another elected official." This applies to myself, this applies to my fellow board members, and it applies to other elected officials who do not have to follow board policy. Because this is not a policy. These are unanimously approved rules for participating in this meeting and for preserving the dignity of this boardroom. As presiding officer of this assembly, I will enforce these rules and ask for assistance of board members in doing so. And I want to mention one more thing. Last week, a concerned citizen mentioned to this board that until a judge somewhere tells you that Justice Katie is wrong, I don't think you have a right to question our sheriff. Now, sometimes the price of keeping it cool is not responding in the moment, but I do want to say this now, very briefly. With respect and as a reminder, we do not live in communist China. Everyone has all the right to question our sheriff, and he has all the right to question this board. The moment the civil discourse shifts to suppression, I don't believe this board should allow itself to be intimidated. Are there any other citizen concerns? And item 2 is approval of the agenda dated July 18th.
I'll move it.
I'll second the motion by Radek. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate roll call vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the July 11th meeting. Item 4 is approval of the claims. Item 5 from Board Administration is approval of a lifting of tax suspension for initials MM. Item 6 from Board Administration includes item A, approval of a notice of a property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 1415 Center Street and setting that for Tuesday, August 1st at 4:35 p.m. Item B is approval of notice of property sale resolution for parcel also known as 814 33rd Street and setting that for Tuesday, August 1st at 4:37 p.m. Item 7 from Human Resources is approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Motion by Radek, second by Dewitt. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 8 from Building Services includes items A through G. Item A is an information item titled LEC Optimization Plan Project B Intake.
Thank you, Kenny Schmitz, Building Services. As you all are aware, we have been working diligently to come up with design plans for the LEC detention facility. I've got with me tonight Goldberg Group. Representing them is Kevin Rost, and I'll ask him to come up and do a brief presentation. I know we've got a lot of items here we're going to try to cover, and so I'll ask Kevin to try to be brief, but if you have any questions, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Kenny. My name's Kevin Ross with Goldberg Group Architects. What Shane has handed out here is just a couple sheets out of a set of documents we've been working on for the intake project at the LEC. I'd be more than happy to go through it in much or as little detail as you like in order to respect everybody's time on this. So we spent quite a fair amount of time with the Sheriff's Department and Kenny and the Baker Group going through these plans, coming up with a plan that met their needs. We're at the point now of preparing the final documents to go out for bids once we get approval from the board on that. So what we wanted to bring in front of you was just a sample of the actual project so we can run through it in any detail level you like. But what this is that space that we identified in the optimization study to utilize some of the underused space inside the facility in order to capture better booking and intake, as well as some additional holding for the Sheriff's Department and staff there. What this project consists of is taking the original vehicular sally port, which is a little bit underused at this point, and creating a new booking and intake area for that. We'll have a small addition on the outside to create a secure sally port with a search area just directly inside that, in which case the arresting officer will transfer incoming inmates to the booking staff inside that booking area. We've got a brand new booking counter, and we've got multiple variations of holding cells. We have some smaller holding cells for 2 to 3 inmates. We've got a larger open holding area, and then we've got a larger group holding area in there. I think capacity-wise, if I remember correctly, we were at 31 for temporary holding for processing. And we've also got, as we move around the corner there, we've got a couple additional interview rooms, a soft interview room, as well as a more of a incarcerated or soon-to-be incarcerated interview room that will also have the video arraignment system in there as well too for their first appearances and stuff with the court systems. As part of this project, we have a couple areas that we're needing to relocate, the ASAP office being one of them, which you're seeing back up near that column grid G, top right-hand side of the page there. Basically, that's for the sobriety checks and check-ins and stuff like that. Basically recreating that area in a space that's being vacated by current staff. We're also relocating the transport offices, which we've moved up to the second floor. We've taken a portion of that, if you look on that second sheet there, of the non-contact visitation space that is not being used to its capacity as well too, and creating a new transport office up there, as well as an additional attorney visit room for inmates that are being housed up on that second floor there. That's about it, yeah, in a nutshell. Like I said, I'm open to as much detail or as questions that you guys may have, but I know we kind of ran through things fairly quickly there.
Any questions?
So I just have a comment, if I can, Mr. Chair. I'm very appreciative of the process, and I know we have some members of the Sheriff's Office tonight that are here, but it seems that it's been a very good collaborative process as far as their involvement in this and garnering as much input as possible. So that's, you know, as liaison here, what I've noticed and I believe would be affirmed. So I'm appreciative as far as some of the details that they've given that they've been incorporated in this plan, and plan to be supportive for that reason. The other thing I want to say is I do think we need to recognize that our jail capacity at 234 has hovered around 180 to 185 on average, Sheriff. I think that's been a great effort and a collaboration as well. So we're trying to tackle both the number of folks that we're housing there as well as the optimization of how we do it. So thank you very much.
Any other questions or thoughts? I would say it's a good and encouraging thing. There's not too many questions at this point, because it's most important to get this step right. Everything else hinges on it.
Absolutely.
Are we okay to move on to item B, Kenny?
We are.
Next item is for information as well, Trosper Hoyt Juvenile Detention Project.
As well as the LEC, we've also been working on the Trosper Juvenile Detention area. Again, we've worked with the same group. Again, Kevin's got handouts for you, I believe. Shane's got them to pass out. And I'll let Kevin talk a little bit about the juvenile detention project we've been working on.
Thank you, Kenny. The plans you got in front of you now we're finalizing as well too for the juvenile detention center there at Trosper Hoyt. We spent a considerable amount of time meeting with Mr. Olson and his staff to come up with what has been slated for the first, hopefully, round of projects for this particular facility. Had some detention door replacements, which they are in dire need of. They've got a resident population over there that's fairly rough on these things, and they're in dire need, like I said, of getting some of these doors replaced over there. So we've identified some of them that they could fit within their budget, which I believe there was some funding allocated for previously, as well as replacing the security electronic system there, which would be all your door access, your intercom, utility control, stuff like that. They have a fairly dated system that is done them well so far, but it's time for its replacement. It's kind of come to the end of its shelf life. So what we've worked through there is identifying those doors that are in the most need of being replaced with a heavier, more secure door and lock system, which will also help Kenny and his staff with repairs and maintenance on these things as well. I said, and then the new PLC and head-end equipment for the security electronic system, tying all the existing cameras and stuff back into that, and then reworking their master control area and the caseworks there. They've kind of got a hodgepodge of video camera equipment and surveillance equipment, access and door control equipment that's ran from the electrical room over to there. So this would be an effort to clean all that up, get it brought up to secure and comfortable use, I guess, would be the end thing. So.
And then one of the other things that you should have that we were going to bring forward to you guys is an overall master plan, because we also did look at the facility overall for any different changes to, for the next 10 years, things to head to. But with the recent change there, we've decided to table that for now. We will still bring that to you, but we've tabled that to now until you bring. We internally never made the agenda, Rocky. We tabled it before we brought it here because with that person changing, we didn't feel it was fair to put a master plan in that the new director didn't have some say in as well. So,
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what's the timeline look like once we go out to bids on this? When you say return to the board as an action item to seek bids, so once that goes out, what does the timeline look before you award?
Right now we were looking to ask for your approval as an action item next Tuesday, with bids due back August 22nd.
And then once that's awarded, what does the timeline look like when it's come to fruition?
I would guess probably March of next year to be complete, because detention hollow metal is about 120 days out, so that's 4 months. So the construction would actually start in, let's just say January. So give them, and with the schedule of kids being there that we've got to try to work around, it's not that we can just go tear out these doors. We've got to do them one at a time. We can't tear the electronics out. We've got to do it sequentially.
And our last question, any of those doors that were going to be prohibitively costly taken out that are affecting the controls portion of the process? Does my question make sense? We had heard that there were some doors that were not going to be done.
Right. So
right?
Just to give you a little background on that, we met with Henry Henkel there at the city just to get some clarification on some code issues there. There's currently some issues there that may not have been addressed correctly during the initial remodel of that facility that we're having to deal with now. So when we start replacing some of these doors, we had an initial quote for some of these doors. When we start doing them per the letter of the code with the closers and the fire rate and all this stuff, the cost of the doors went up, which then reduced the number of doors we're able to replace. I know originally there was 50-some thousand slotted for door replacement that I believe Mark had come and asked for the past 2 fiscal years, and then there was another 135 for security electronics.
So there was, so we did $50,000 the board allocated in fiscal year FY16, $50,000 in FY17. Those were both for doors, and then the board allocated $355,100 for security electronics, and that was allocated in FY17. So we melded that all together to try to get the best mix of what we were doing.
But we're going to be able to do all of the control sequencing regardless of whether or not we do a few particular doors less because of that issue. Thank you. That's,
Sorry.
Yeah.
no, that's it. I didn't phrase my question well.
And with the additional cost of these doors, we went through and prioritized which doors are the ones that most need to be replaced the soonest. So that's what
Okay.
we've got on those plans currently.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item. Item C. Approval of LEC project C1 Goldberg Group Architects contract.
Yeah, excuse me. The item before you is an action item. Follows the LEC optimization plan project C1. C1 addresses inmate dress out assessment, property storage, and a staffing analysis. And we're asking the board for a motion to approve C1, and so we can move forward with getting associated costs and approving a staffing analysis cost as part of that project. There are two motions attributed to that. The first would be Goldberg Group's contract, and the second would be the Baker Group assigned as construction manager if that project would move forward. Kevin?
And you've got in front of you kind of twofold there. They're kind of tied together like the rest of this stuff. These projects kind of go sequentially at the Law Enforcement Center. The first plan you've got there is a large plan of Project C.1, which is the new dress-out area, property storage, and classification office. It also shows a piece of Project C2, I believe, which is a break room. Or is that part of C1? Sorry. That's part of C2. Yeah. So they kind of go hand in hand through the center core area, the second floor there. So what we've done is reutilize some of the space up there with the notion that the intake's going to go forward downstairs. That freed up some space upstairs to get additional property storage, which they need, and another classification office, as well as redo that dress-out area. When we redo that dress-out area, that ties to Project C2 that you'll see on the next page, and we can get to that when Kenny goes to the next agenda item. But that's kind of that first project in a nutshell, as well as the staffing analysis, which is kind of spread between those as well, too. I know part of what we talked about with the Sheriff's Department is once we start doing these projects, we really need to evaluate what the staffing plan is for the facility.
Is there a reason we're breaking them down even to the smaller projects yet?
As far as between like C.1 and C.2, just because of the combined aggregate of those projects exceeded the
It's the combined aggregate, and also it's got to be due in steps. We have to free up one area before we can begin a project in another area.
I thought we were just bidding out a large project and phasing it as it went along, not bidding out a lot of little projects.
I'm a little confused at your question. We're not phasing any project. They're all standalone projects that stand by themselves. You could truly do the intake project in C1 and not do C2. That's why they're set up that way. These are standalone things that are addressing. The only caveat to them is you can't do C2 and not do the other two in front of it because they're all going into space that we've already repurposed to someplace else. So we can't do a large project because their construction sequence would be one has to be done before the next one can start.
Well, yeah, I just thought we were going to bid it as one and then phase it. I mean, it's just like the interstate. They bid a section and they wouldn't build the bridge before they approach, you know, even though they do the bridge and then they approach.
Kenny, would you just briefly explain the budgeting process we went through as far as the CIP and the planning of dropping these projects in as a budgeted item so we can get past that discussion real quick?
Yes. So we design these projects at certain dollar amounts so we didn't exceed our limit, okay? And so as part of that, one of the other items is we are not allowed to phase projects. By state authority, I believe it is, So these projects, or any project that you do, has to be a standalone project. In other words, it's a project that you can do regardless of this project over here. One won't affect similarly the other. And so when we were setting up projects and identifying each project, we then did CIP allocations when we were doing the budgeting process for each one of those different items, which also tied back into Goldberg Group's original LEC optimization plan. So we could keep all of the projects separated and basically identified as a separate project, so there would be no confusion at a later date on whether we were mixing projects and phasing.
Thank you.
Well, I do remember that, but I believe they were about a 1.2 or a $300,000 project. And what was this one estimated at?
C1 is 935, C2 is about 760 range. So together they're a $1.6 million project. We normally could not do, as Dennis will tell you, we normally could not do over 1.2 in any one building. But through your working with Mark Corey, your bonding attorney, he said since these were both standalone projects, that we could do these two at the same time, even given the fact it was 1.6.
As long as we kept them identified as
Separate projects.
Okay.
And thus separately bid, correct?
And that's why you have separate contracts on both from both entities, is to truly keep them separate.
I guess on paper, it just didn't look like 900 grand or 700 grand.
Sure.
And everybody has to remember with these projects, C1 is also going to address some HVAC concerns in that area. Because between C1 and C2, when you put a new medical area, you've got to change the ventilation around there so that you're containing that. The ventilation hasn't been touched, and a lot of that's original. So we've got to get that upgraded. As part of what our promise to the board was, we would be touching creature comforts as well as other places that we would keep a 30-year-old system.
Good point. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
I'd move to approve the LEC project C1 Goldberg Group Architects AIA B132 contract.
Second. Second the motion by Taylor. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item D, also for action, is to approve C1 Baker Group contract as construction manager.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Motion by Radek, second by Taylor. Discussion? Feel confident on this one, Shane? Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item E for action is approval of LEC optimization plan project C2 Goldberg Group Architects contract.
Again, C2, again, is a standalone project. It just is another portion of a detention project that we have. C2, we'll look at touching the medical examination areas, isolation, a dispensary, care provider, nurse's office area, and a detention staff break area. Again, as part of that project, we also touch HVAC in the areas that we're in to improve those.
Just a quick overview of that plan there. With the ability for C.1 to go forward, we're able to create a larger property storage in that area, which then allows us to capture some of that property storage space and dress out space that's down there for an enlarged medical area that goes from, I think they have currently 2 isolation holding cells to 4 in there, and 3 nurses or doctor staff have the ability there with direct observation. We also have secure medical storage in there, and then part of the rest of that would be the staff break room with inside the secure perimeter there. It's a pretty simple and straightforward project, kind of like C.1, so we kind of had to break these apart just because of the logistics of them all. But we're able to utilize some space in there to improve the facilities for the staff.
Mr. Taylor.
I'm very appreciative. I think the medical examination room is critical, something that has been neglected for far too long and has been long needed, along with the staff break area and some things that you would think would normally be in such a facility. My question is, ACH, have you had much have a chance to bring them into any of these conversations, or has it been more working with the sheriff's office on
Currently, it's just been the sheriff's.
what their needs are as related through them?
Yes, sir. It's currently just been the sheriff's staff to kind of get a program started for that particular project. And yes, once we get a little bit further down the road, it sounds like ACH would be a viable resource to bring in to collaborate with on that.
Okay, and that'd be my only hope and comment there, is that takes place as well. So, thank you.
Any other questions?
I would move item E.
Second the motion by Radek. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item F for action is approval of Baker Group contract as construction manager.
I'd move that.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item G is an action item, approval of Law Enforcement Center HVAC automation front-end project.
The item before you is an action item to approve the Baker Group contract for the LEC front-end HVAC project, which you've already approved. Previously, we did Resource Consulting Engineers contract and Star Controls contract. This is finally the follow-up to get Baker Group's contract before you for that project.
Very good.
I'd move it.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radek. Discussion. There's been HVAC issues in that building for years, so I don't see a way to really get at that without making it part of a bigger project.
Yes, tying in that building with the rest of our systems and making sure we finally get some oversight on what's happening there will be huge for us.
I think one good reminder for the general public is 1987. That was really rated for 90 people, and now 234 is the maximum capacity. So HVAC issues have long been wanting, and I think it's a good move.
Yeah. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Kenny. Item 9 is 2 action items from Secondary Roads, Engineer Mark Nera. Item A is to consider approval of plans for project number as stated on the agenda.
This is the replacement of a short span bridge on Old Highway 20 near the town of Cushing. We're proposing probably an early to mid-August letting on the project. We're waiting for the last of our permits to come back in, but we're ready to submit final plans. Recommend approval of plans.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radek, second by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B for action is to receive bids for county pavement markings for 2017.
Annually, we take bids for pavement markings. I do have bid tabs for the board. There are extra copies if anybody else wants one.
Are you doing about the same amount this year, 33 to 50?
We're actually trying to do a little bit more this year. We're probably going to be doing a lot more Centerline this year, trying to get them all up to better visibility. We have some wear areas that just don't do well any year and require annual reapplication. But we are proposing to do more. Depending on where the prices come in, we have added to the contract as well. The first bid is from Iowa Plains Signing of Waterloo, Iowa. Appropriate bid bond was included. Total bid price for the planned quantity, $88,382, $88,382. They were looking at $13.98 per gallon for the centerline yellow, and edgeline white. The special markings near, for Port Neal Road are for the left turn lanes, turn arrows that are at the entrance to the new CF plant. That's really turning out to be a very high wear area for us. They don't seem to be surviving much more than a year. This is from Vogel Traffic Services, Orange City, Iowa. Bid bond is included. Total bid price, $84,791.30. 8479130. They are bidding $13.70 per gallon. With looking at where the bid items are for each of them, I think I can make an award tonight, a recommendation of award tonight to go with Vogel Traffic Services. That would allow us to get the contract started earlier.
I will move the recommendation of the engineer.
Second.
Motion by Radek, second by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
ask the engineer a quick question?
Sure.
On those special marking projects, is the roadway been chipped up in any way, shape, or form so the paint adheres better, or is it just on a smooth surface?
The roadway before the first application in these locations was hit with their hydro demolition that they use now in front of it, so that all of the curing compound and such from construction were removed. It's just that with all the semis turning and cutting the turning lane a little bit short at times, it tends to wear that paint more quickly. There's between 30 and 35,000 trucks per year now utilizing that entrance, so it is a heavy use area for us, both coming and going into it.
Okay.
The other one over by, I think it was Old Highway 75, Old Lakeport and K45. That's a large gore area we have where we have the triangular intersection where Old Lakeport Road and Old 75 meet south of Sergeant Bluff.
Okay.
Again, one of the reasons we treat that as a special project is it's not something they can do in the truck just heading down the road. There's cross-hatching and other line work that needs to be done. And it's done with a smaller walk-behind machine as opposed to the more productive truck-mounted machine.
Okay.
So we treat these as special traffic areas. We also have the arrows on the Portland project as well that take some additional time. We saw them doing it in Sioux City here not very long ago. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10 is an action item from Planning and Zoning. This is approval of resolution to approve final plating and to authorize the chairman's signature regarding CDR Swine Addition subdivision.
Good evening. John Palolo, Director of Planning and Zoning. We've received a subdivision application from Randy and Cindy Reitiger, who wish to take an approximate 25-acre parent parcel and divide it into 2 lots. Lot 1 will be approximately 23 acres, and the intent is to have that lot remain in agricultural, probably row crop production. Lot 2 is approximately a 1.7-acre parcel, which is intended to have a hog barn placed on it, which meets the state's definition of a CAFO, or a concentrated animal feeding operation. On June 20th, we referred this issue to your zoning commission, who held public hearing on the 26th of June. At that hearing, they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the final plat, subject to some changes on the plat, which have taken place and are in the packet information. It might be noted that considerable public testimony was received that evening. The zoning staff's recommendation concurs with the commission's for final plat approval. This location is approximately 4.5 miles north of Lawton, Iowa. along the south side of Highway D12, also known as 110th Street. Closest intersection is Delaware and D12. Happy to entertain any questions your board may have.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, John. I just, typically I respect the recommendation of the zoning commission. I was just wondering if you could briefly give us what the certain plat changes were and then answer this as a follow-on. This isn't in a conditional use per se, is it? Or
It is not.
it is not. So the changes that were, can you just describe those? I mean, I have the packet, but I'm not sure I
Many of the
discern.
changes were recommended by the real estate department of the recorder's office relative to signature block information.
Okay, so
being
nothing
more
that would be
precise.
deemed a game changer by neighbors or any sort of fruition of public comment? Is that?
The most significant mapping change to the platting was showing the location of the driveways, which were originally omitted from the platting. In part because the engineer had not at that time yet approved a specific driveway location for Lot 2. The existing larger lot will continue to be served by a field entrance, which is currently placed. Nothing other of significant issues related to that. I think we did ask the name of the subdivision be changed to include the word addition, and that was more cosmetic in nature than anything.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
Would you like to sum up some of the significant discussion, as you mentioned, at the last Board of Adjustment meeting?
I'd be happy to. They were generally in about 3 specific areas related to what you might typically would conceive would come out of an operation which is placing approximately 4,800 nursery pigs. To put that in perspective, we're taking pigs from 15 pounds to somewhere in the 50 to 60 pound range and then transferring them to another facility for feed out for slaughter. It is unfortunate that CAFOs that are sized are typically sized in this manner. This is not unusual to have these sized, below animal unit thresholds that require a manure management plan be presented to the county and to the DNR, or trigger the matrix process wherein the county works with the DNR to score a facility that has to meet air quality, water quality, and neighborhood issues. Community, I think they refer to them as. The only 2 facilities that Woodbury County currently has that has gone through that matrix process are our 2 dairies. They are generally much significantly larger animal unit facilities. A dairy cow is 1.4 animal units. A piglet of the weight we're talking about here is just 0.1 animal units. So this facility at full capacity would be 480 units under the 500 units that would require a manure management plan be filed with us, as well as the 1,000 animal unit that triggers the construction resolution process and permitting process through the DNR. Getting back to the issues related to the public testimony that was given at the zoning commission meeting, basically it consisted of perceived future nuisance issues related to odor, insect. It dealt with use of the right-of-way and its safety issues. It dealt with the assertion that land values within the neighborhood would decline. And I can't think of any other category, but there may have been one other. I am well aware that we'll probably have some public testimony here tonight that may deal with other areas of concern that were included in the testimony on the 26th or were not.
Mr. Palolo, from your experience, have you witnessed or seen, or can you prove any loss of land value adjacent to these type of farms?
I am not obviously the expert when it comes to land values, it's probably a better question addressed to our assessor's office. I think there are studies that will show, based upon certain factual circumstances, that land values can be impacted, most generally by an analysis of sale prices going forward. But that is something that is crystal ball stuff. I don't know if those are issues directly related to, hey, the perception that I've got a nuisance facility. I'm not interested if I've got two places I could buy and one is within 1,000 feet of a confinement and one isn't, and they're essentially the same. Which one am I going to do? Does that impact your the level of interested parties in buying a piece of ground? Common sense would dictate yes. But I don't have any data from any of our facilities. We have other confinement facilities, but they're all sized below, where typically there's no public forum for a party to come to and voice their objection other than to call our office in an attempt to make sure we deal with these issues and don't issue a permit. Unfortunately, because of the state legislature's role in protecting agricultural operation and farming, which includes livestock production and CAFOs, and subsequent state attorney general opinions as well as case law, I would have a very difficult time coming up with any reason to apply any of our zoning ordinances to these types of facilities that would withstand judicial review.
Does that kind of sum up your reasoning behind recommending approval?
Yes, we don't have any, anything else would be just my personal opinion, and I think relative to what we're doing here today. We have to follow the cards we've been dealt in regard to not being able to apply our zoning ordinances. However, we can apply our subdivision ordinances, and that's the process here before us. The issue we have here is, do we evaluate a final plat approval based upon the use of the intended lots? And that's probably an answer I don't have for you because it's a legal one. We're simply assessing a division of an existing parcel in which there's no requirement that the applicant share with us what his intended uses are for those parcels. He has done that. They have been open and fair with releasing information, in my mind, both to my department as well as to the zoning commission, and I expect that'll continue here tonight.
Okay. Questions from the board for the director at this point? Is the board ready to hear citizen input?
Sure.
Are there two sides to this issue out there, or is everyone on the same page? Are there those in favor of this recommendation? Okay, well, we'll ask you to speak first, and then we'll go to those opposed.
I won't take up too much time. Randy Riediger, brought my son Riley. The reason I'm trying to put up this building is to try and expand the family operation. We're just small farmers. We only farm about 600 acres. Livestock is currently about the only way to really get anybody young involved and then give them a stake back in it. Hopefully I'll be able to turn the building over to Riley. The reason we went with a subdivision versus just putting the building up and not going through this process, the gentleman I'm putting it up with, he's also the contractor, and we do get a bit of a price break because he's involved, and it kind of helps us alleviate some cost in that. This is not going to be a cheap building. It's 102 by 159. I did not have to have any setbacks, but I pushed the building back as far as I could to try and keep as much distance between me and any neighbor. My brother, which was here last week, he's only about 1,100 feet. The objecting neighbor, the closest one, is 1,250. Now, on the road, Mark Nair and I set it up. We have at least 900, if not 1,100 feet of clear distance between any hill or corner or anything. So safety should not be an issue. We have the driveway set up so the trucks have to pull in and then back up to the chute. That was one of my main concerns, because a lot of times we get drivers that don't quite understand the rules of the road. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Not at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no others here in favor of this motion, would anyone like to come up opposed to this? Please state your name and address and do your best to abide by about 3 minutes.
My name is Dwayne Reeder. I live at 1086 Delaware Avenue. My wife and I are the landowners directly north of this proposed facility. And we have farmed here for the past 39 years. I would like to address several reasons to deny this subdivision, to build a hog facility for a corporation to facilitate a factory facility, pig facility. Public safety. There are no passing signs both east and west of the proposed facility. This county blacktop road D12 is a heavily used road by commuters to and from Sioux City in large numbers of semi-trucks hauling grain and livestock. Property values. This facility, if built, would drive down property values in a large geographical area, and as I ask, will our property taxes go down accordingly? Quality of life. My wife and I have lived in our house on our farm since 1978. We would like to enjoy, as would all our neighbors, our homes without the flies and stink of hogs. Who benefits the most? It will not be the neighborhood, only the corporation to build a factory hog facility. Woodbury County zoning ordinance. Woodbury County zoning ordinance was enacted August 1st, 2008, and a lot has changed in those years. Farm exempt is no longer valid because corporations are using farm exempt status to get around what it was meant to protect actual farmers. Environment. The Whiskey Creek watershed in our area has been determined a flood zone area. What will be the effect of the water quality? And this is a hot topic issue for the whole state of Iowa. Des Moines Waterworks is a prime example. Not just for our area, but downstream, Sioux City, Sergeant Bluff, and so on will be affected. Is there tile on this farm where manure will be applied and will it dump harmful bacteria in the Whiskey Creek watershed? And what about the corporation promoting this facility? And what are they doing to ensure that these issues don't happen? I brought up many issues that I believe need to be addressed before issuing this subdivision. If you approve this subdivision, you are opening the floodgates to many, many more hog facilities throughout Woodbury County that will forever change the landscape of all Woodbury County, including Sioux City. Thank you for letting me voice my concerns. Any questions?
Oh, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hello?
I'm Walt Reinhold. My address is 2605 Glen Ellen, Sioux City, Iowa. I'm addressing this project because I'd like to have you put it on hold and refuse it. Now, have any of you went out to the site and looked over the site?
I did drive by.
Nobody else? No. It's interesting. The site is interesting. Okay, how it affects me. I'm within 200 feet with my property of that building. And naturally, it'll only be good for corn. It won't be good for no development when that hog house is there. In other words, they're taking me down. Not that, I don't know, in other words, the options are gone. We only can raise corn, for instance. And the people that run the land will have to put up with the odor. Okay, my family down the road, they will have to, when the wind blows the wrong direction, get in their car and leave because of this. Okay, this will affect you, each one of you. Because if you can approve this, they can put one next door to you. Okay, the road. The people will have to put up with the smell and the risk of that road. And if nothing else, if it ain't for you and me, it should be for the citizens of Woodbury County. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing no one else, Director Palello, would you come back up, please? Any initial thoughts from the board or perhaps a supervisor that's been out there?
My question is, and you've already addressed it, is Mr. Nara said that there's, in his mind and his experience, there's no safety concerns?
Your packet contains the comments of the county engineer that was taken into consideration by the commission and staff in our recommendations. I think it speaks for itself. Basically, that sightline distances were proper, and there were no visibility issues. And the setback of 170 feet from Centerline would allow trucks not to back either accessing or egressing the site. I can talk about water quality in that the testimony before the zoning commission was the fact that there are 2 terraces on the parent parcel. The furthest north of the 2 terraces will be partially impacted by the grading plan. However, the further south terrace will remain intact and will be upstream from drainage of the parcel into a tributary to a water source. In other words, it'll protect in some way, in a major way, protect that water source from sedimentation leaving the parcel.
Did you hear any comments today that were different than what has been discussed at the last zoning meeting?
I did not.
It's easier said than understood, obviously, when you say this is a procedural separation, that we can't weigh in on what exactly it'll be used for.
It's
sure
hard
you can
to
understand
not
that.
to untwine the two, obviously, but it's unfortunate there's no other forum for this group of people to come and be heard on their issues other than a public hearing. What you should be aware of is, even if this subdivision is placed on hold, delayed, or denied, that would not forego the applicant still submitting a building permit for placement of the structure exactly where it's shown on the platting. And we'd have no reason at an administrative level to not issue building permit. It can be built whether we subdivide or not, is what I'm saying. It may not meet their business model, but it could happen.
Mr. Taylor?
So then what I'm hearing is it's an inevitability that this building is going to be built, that this hog confine, that we're going forward either way. No matter what it may not conform to exactly that business model plan, but this board isn't going to either prevent or help to come to fruition based on what we do in the next 10 minutes. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair statement, but obviously it takes the model to be changed somewhat on the business side, not the...
But it doesn't change what the concerns are that were heard tonight, nor the concerns that were most likely heard before the zoning commission, correct?
same concerns. It would just take away the methodology of having a public hearing and allowing people to be heard.
Mr. Chair, I believe someone else would like to be heard, if that's okay.
I'd like to see you put it on hold so that.
Please approach the microphone, sir.
Put it on hold so we can get more engineering and information. And get to the legal, so we can get to the legal and fight if we want to, rather than have it approved. And I have an attorney right now that wants to address this. So, hold.
Do you have an
And if
attorney
I-
who would like to address the board, or Mr. Taylor?
If I may respond, it seems to me that your legal rights and recourse and whatever standing you think is there are still there, no matter if this board approves or denies this tonight. It sounds like this county has no other recourse, even if it was denied tonight, for denying a building permit, and that building permit, from everything that I garner from our planning and zoning director, would not be denied. So this facility would go forward either way. It may just look a little different, but nothing that would be positively changed as to what you folks are seeking as a remedy. That's the rub of the thing, is I don't think that we have, I personally normally respect our zoning commission recommendations, and because of that, because this facility is going to go forward either way, it'll just be in a little different parameter. I would move approval of this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Sir.
If you don't take action, you'll have to go to court, and then the building won't come. But you'll have to go to court.
I'm not an attorney, and I've lately been reminded Supervisor Potabom's helped me in that. So I'm not sure the legalities of it, but I think that if you have legal counsel and want to exercise that, you can do so whether or not this board approves or denies that. My only response was, it sounds like whether we deny this minor change in the platting, that a building permit will still be issued because there's no contrary reason to deny it, and that this...
Well, that's your job to deny it.
It's not our job to deny a building permit for which otherwise someone has the right to gain one. And that's a different, and sounds like a different and separate issue, and our zoning director can contradict me if I'm wrong, because I've been in the past. But that sounds like a separate issue, the denial of a building permit, and it sounds like that building permit will be issued. But again, you have that, I believe you have that legal recourse if you think that it's there.
It's hard on people.
I understand that. I understand.
Typically, how these issues play out, not necessarily in Woodbury County, but statewide, is if and when any facility or constructions take place that creates a perceived or actual nuisance. It's a civil action between the property owners impacted, and it's dealt with in the judicial system that way. It's unfortunate that that's what this one is. I can add a little bit of background to the fact that there is some rumbling at the state level by the Council of Zoning Officials that they may come up with a formal policy to ask some type of legislative review or an amendment to the Iowa Code that doesn't exempt these types of facilities. It's an issue. It always has been, and it probably will continue to be. That being said, we have to enforce and administer the law as it is now, not what it might be in the future. I might also add that our comprehensive plan, as it currently exists for Woodbury County, and its zoning ordinances are designed have policies and goals that are tied to protecting agriculture and coincide with what's in the current state code. Until that code changes, we don't, in my opinion, have much flexibility in putting additional restrictions on any qualifying facility, albeit CAFO or not, that for some reason or another we or unfortunately our citizens don't like.
Mr. Parvo.
Yeah, so basically the state set this animal unit number, which just kills me that a pig's 0.1 unit and cow's 1.4, but, and once, until it reaches the level that they've set, we really don't have much to say no.
That's correct.
I'd like to find the bureaucrat who figured out what an animal unit is.
I think it's tied to...
They don't change as the hogs get bigger, do they?
It is tied to weight. Yeah, anything from poultry to fish to livestock of any kind. It's tied to typically to weight and obviously production of byproducts.
Any other comments from the board?
I do. With, as Mr. Reinhold said, it's going to be adjacent to some of his property. And to your question or your comment, I don't want one next to my house. And same for you, Mr. Reeder. And we've had that conversation. I don't want one next to my house. But I have to realize that the state is the one that's got their thumb on the scale. And I'm not going to be able to tell Mr. Reediger that he can't use his land for what it's zoned for. And understand that I don't want it next to my house, but there's really nothing that the county level can do. It sounds like it's going to have to be a civil action now if you want to proceed. Because I wouldn't want anybody else in this room coming out and telling me that I can't put up an accessory structure even though that property is zoned for it and it's proper and it might block somebody's view of a nice grove or who knows what. So as being a rural property owner, I can honestly say I don't want a swine facility next to me, but I guess that's one of the risks you take when you live in a rural area. So, thank you.
That should not be the reason we should approve this subdivision. You know, I'm going to be the one that's probably most affected by this because I live the closest. And I think we ought to be able to recognize that there's going to be water quality problems with them knifing in all this manure on this property. We have tiling in this property. It's going to filter to the tiles and it's going to go into the Whiskey watershed. And it will pass on down through Sergeant Bluff. It will affect Sioux City. It will have bacteria. And who knows what will happen after that. And this is a large corporation that's going to put these hogs in here. This isn't just a farmer using his property for what he wants to do. We're incorporating large corporations to fill this facility. He will not own the pigs. He'll just build a facility. And a big corporation will own the hogs. And this is the way we want to go? I think not. So I think denying this would be the best way to go, or at least study it for longer to see what other actions we can do.
I remember 1,000 head cattle feeding down, would have been south and east of Anthem. And that would seem to me to be a lot more manure than some piglets, but.
That's going to be turned over 8 times. That's 38,400 head of pigs go in this facility yearly. That's 380,000 gallons of manure to be applied yearly.
Thank you.
Not a good process. We're getting contaminated all over the place. And you representing all citizens of Woodbury County, I think it would be diligent of you to at least study this a little longer. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Peter Woodman, 1847 Old Highway 141, Sergeant Bluff. Live down by Bronson. Farm along the Whiskey Creek watershed. I'm a fourth-generation farmer. I got 6 kids. Hope that some of them follow my footsteps. I've got 5 farms that I farm that border the Whiskey Creek. And 3 years ago, down along Bronson's 141, we're getting a new bridge this year, so that's exciting. But basically, the water backed up, crossed over 141, closed down the road, came to my property, flooded my place as well. And the environmental concerns are probably my predominant concern. In agriculture today, it's hard to keep a good name. Water quality is in the news all the time, and I just when you see these articles and news events, it's generally the corporate farms that have the issues. It's not the mom and dad that's trying to raise a family and have something to pass on. So those are my concerns. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, Supervisor Taylor said this item would be over 1 minute ago. It was 11 minutes ago. You said 10 minutes. So I think we need to take a vote unless there's final comments from board members. I would just say, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the county's appointed a commission, a board to look into this issue, and that's how the county's been engaged. Is appointing other stakeholders that would weigh in and give us a recommendation.
We are required by statute to appoint 5 people from rural Woodbury County, a majority of which are rural citizens. I think we've got a good group of people on the zoning commission, as we usually do. I trust their judgment. In that meeting, you could tell there was some of the same feelings of, geez, maybe this is an issue, but we don't have any tools in our toolbox to control it.
This from the commission, you said?
Yeah, I mean, they have the same feelings, and some of them are farmers, livestock farmers. This is a fight that we need to take to the state capitol if you want to fight it, but you're up to, against some very strong adversaries. Well-funded, good lobbyers. I don't think anything would happen in regard to reduction in the effect of the ag exemption, certainly in our lifetime.
With the construction down south of town, we're going to see more of these.
I've got 3 more in Woodbury County. Unfortunately, they will not go through any type of public hearing process because no subdivisions are required or desired. One of those other 3 we've already issued the permit on, and construction has began. We have no way to deny them. That'll pass judicial scrutiny.
Thank you. Hearing no other comments from the board. One more time, sir.
I was here a year ago, and you guys denied the borrow pit on 141. You must have had the power. You had the power to deny that. You 141, remember that? Lieber wanted the borrow pit, and you guys denied it.
I can briefly comment on that process.
Let's not. Well, we need to.
Other than to tell you it was not you that denied, it was the Board of Adjustment under a conditional use permit.
Anyway, it was
Thank you for the
denied.
clarification.
And if the citizens don't have no, if you can't help us, who can help us? You're our representative.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 11 is an action item from the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Taylor, to approve a change to the employee handbook on work rules regarding lawful carry of weapons in county buildings. As a reminder, To everyone, please confine your remarks to the question at hand. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors last week obviously took some action to ensure the rights of citizens in accordance with the law enacted on July 1st, 2017, which the board took steps to comport with on 2 different occasions. However, what I'd like to address tonight is I believe that there's a duty to ensure professionalism and safety through policy concerning that which is within the purview of the Board of Supervisors. So some background regarding the recent discussion concerning both the lifting of the weapons ban and the change to the work rule regarding employees. There's been circumstances in which this board has had to attempt to conform rather quickly to Iowa code, and such circumstances included a long but never delivered Attorney General's opinion, supervisory court order 8 days ahead of the last meeting before July 1st, an email from the HR director following board chair guidance concerning a work rule, and finally our action to affirmatively act concerning the work rule. What I'd like the discussion to focus on tonight concerns only employees. It's not intended to be a discussion of the following: the merits of lifting the weapons ban, because that's not the item before us. The disagreement that's gone on between the sheriff's office and the majority of the board, procedure or process, the role of the judicial branch, interpersonal conflict, or even the wisdom of House File 517 as enacted into law. In other words, echoing what Director Palello was just saying, his personal opinion had little to do with it. These are the cards we've been dealt, and we have to enforce and administer the law. So here's what I'd ask that the discussion pertain to. This board has taken action to allow employees to lawfully carry. Includes areas such as the Courthouse Law Enforcement Center in Trosper Hoyt. Sheriff Drew has conceded that this is lawfully permissible under that supervisory court order. And Sheriff, if I say anything that's contrary to what you believe, you'll correct me if I'm in error, I trust. And so under advice of legal counsel, we have a right and responsibility to enact work rules that prohibit any misuse of firearms, intimidation or harassment, and lay out an expectation for appropriate conduct. The board has already moved. In other words, the question really before us is, in order to comport with Iowa code and with what we believe is necessary, what parameters can we now put in place to ensure professionalism and respect? Our employees have the right to know what the expectations are of them. Otherwise, we put them in an untenuous and untenable situation. So here's what I would like to suggest be added. After the sentence about lawful possession in the employee handbook, I propose adding this language: notwithstanding the foregoing, employees are prohibited from possessing firearms or county property in all courtrooms and in certain restricted areas or buildings for security reasons, such as the jail and juvenile detention. I understand that those within the judicial branch may not think that that goes far enough, but at least we can be very clear on courtrooms and in those secure areas such as the jail and juvenile detention. Some people may say, well, that's black and white. Well, let's spell it out. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one relates to conceal and on-body carry. Now, the current law does allow right now for open carry, which is something that those employees otherwise could choose to do, but I don't know if it was fully considered before the email went out or before our board took action. And I asked our sheriff his opinion because I value what that would look like. You have the practicality of overseeing courthouse security, and I believe you said, and you correct me again if I'm wrong, concealability would be a lot better. And I think I can characterize that doesn't make the sheriff a fan, but that between the two, either open carrying or conceal carrying, that it would be preferable to have conceal carry. That'd be accurate. And so Major Todd Wick also affirmed that those who have a permit can carry open or concealed, but I believe it is within the purview of the preference of the Board of Supervisors, I hope, tonight, to have employees who wish to lawfully carry do so concealed, which is what the Iowa Capitol also asked for, and actually is in concert with the original motion that was passed by this board, because I believe the exact verbiage is as exercised at the Iowa Capitol, was in the original motion. That needs to be clear. I don't want a situation where any employee comes in and does not know the rules because this board has moved quickly, and I already gave the circumstances by which, we may have been put in that situation, but it needs to be clear. So the courthouse security team would know in a courthouse who was carrying and verify that permit. My understanding is the employee's protection, as far as privacy, would still be there. They alone would know. And so I think the expectation therefore is lessened as far as intimidation. And I think in our conversation, and Sheriff, you talked about having a firearm exposed only invites trouble. And so the other thing I believe is on-body carry lessens the chance of a firearm being placed in a purse, a briefcase, desk, or other area which could be lost. It should be on one's person. And I don't think that adversely affects anybody's right. If somebody says, well, you're making me carry concealed instead of open, and now you've abrogated my rights, then you're welcome to sue. So I would ask that this be added as well. The lawful possession of firearms shall be done only in accordance with on-body carry, being kept in the personal possession of the employee choosing to carry, and done with safety and responsibility in mind. Concealed carry is the only form of carry allowed in any county building where otherwise permitted. And finally, because the board has already taken action, I believe it's important to take action rather swiftly in this matter, and would also ask that we add this concerning reasonable expectations. And here's the verbiage. Employees who choose to carry in permitted areas are expected to exercise their rights and responsibilities with integrity, value, and respect. It is a prohibited practice to leave a firearm unattended or use a firearm to intimidate and or harass. Failure to follow this policy could result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. Those are my opening comments, and I would ask that those portions of the employee handbook that I've asked to be added to, I would move that they be added to, and ask for a second for discussion.
I'll second Taylor's motion for discussion, and I'll just add and agree with your statement that this is in concert with the original motion. That's why I included the backup materials that show the original motion mentioning the Iowa Capitol, as well as the House file that relates to the Capitol buildings and grounds, where open carry is prohibited, but concealed carry is. I do think it's smart to spell out requirements for on-body. Conceal to some people could mean placing it in a hideaway or something like that, which could be detrimental to safety when procured by someone else, of course. So those are my opening comments as well. Any other thoughts from the board? Mr. Potabom?
Well, you don't mind that I don't want firearms in there at all, but that's not this motion. But what surprises me is that this motion now is going to limit what they can carry. If we do let citizens in, and that's down the road somewhere, would this be the same policy for citizens? That would have to be concealed, because to me, when you get a gun permit, you're allowed to carry a gun whether concealed or open. Am I correct, Sheriff?
I would.
I mean, I'm just,
listen.
essentially, I want everybody to be treated the same, employees and citizens. That's why I'm surprised that now we're going to limit, if we're going to let them carry, but we're going to limit how they can carry.
May I?
Sure.
As a concealed carry instructor, and I know the sheriff and his administration, everybody over there knows that I advocate strongly, first, for gun safety, and secondly, and more importantly, for gun responsibility. But going back to your concealable issue, for the good of the public and for the good of fellow employees, I think that concealed carry is the only method. And frankly, and as Mr. Taylor mentioned, that it has to be on body. It's not going to be brought in on a lunchbox. It's not going to be brought in a briefcase. And darn it, this thing's uncomfortable. I'm going to leave it in my desk drawer. It has to be on your body. I've never seen a cop say, oh, I got to go get my gun out of the car because I need it right now. That's not the point. But I think that probably for the public coming in and seeing carry, or seeing open carry by employees, I think sends, at the risk of sounding contradictory, I think it sends the wrong message, because we do have security at the door. So I'm in favor of the on-body concealed at all times. Whether or not the public chooses to do that, all I can say is when I'm teaching my class, I strongly recommend carrying concealed no matter what. So I don't know if that would be an overreach, to use comments from a week or two ago. To make the public carry concealed, I don't think we can. Perhaps we could try, but in the courthouse, but I don't know if we can make them. I would prefer it, but I don't.
My only thought is eventually everybody should be treated the same. Employees, citizens, all. And this can get things gotten so convoluted now that we have several different rules going, but that's just my thought. You know where I stand on the whole thing, but not this issue.
And what I would like to see, and I do value your opinion, I would like to see, I don't know if I get it or not, but unanimous consent. And I know we'll vote, I get that, but at least on this particular issue, because right now, I believe unless the board affirmatively acts, an employee could open carry. And I think we need to specify that if this is the way that the board's going to go, that we need to spell it out. And so whether or not you think that that is a good idea or not, I would ask for your support on this, just to make that a uniform expectation. And I understand and respect Supervisor Potabom. You may want the public to do the same. Like Supervisor Dewitt said, I don't know that we have the right to tell them, but I do know, and I do believe that we have the right to limit what our employees do. That not only the court order said that, but I also believe that we can do so in a way that does not compromise what passed into law. And so in that instance, I no longer think that those are in conflict.
But actually, it isn't that I want the citizens to be treated the same. I'd rather the employees be treated the same as we treat the citizens now and not let them in.
Okay.
That's
So you would want them to be, the employee to be able to open carry just like the...
I'd just assume the ban stay in effect for them too. But that's not happening.
Any other comments from the board before we entertain other comments?
Well, it seems as though we're just clarifying what was passed before, because I was reading House File 517 to see if we're in contradiction with that at all, and as the motion stated, essentially run like the Capitol. That seems to be in accordance with what they do.
And I would say, in response to that, this just makes it clear. I would hope and think that people would know, well, if I work at a professional workplace, I can't intimidate or harass with a firearm. But that's why, you know, of course, we spell it out in policy. I mean, we have means of getting rid of a $45 Lexmark printer that we spell out. So I think it's just saying this is very, very clear, and it sends, I think, a good and clear message as regards gun safety, respect, responsibility, and so on.
And I would add one more thing. The difference between us and the Capitol is they don't have courts. They have a lot of hearings that get hot, just like courtrooms do, but they don't have courts. So that's why they didn't fall under the supervisory order at all. So.
Director Gilliland, I was not able to hear your concern 10 seconds before the meeting, but you had an opinion on very limited wording. I'd just like to ask you to address only that. And
I think we're probably all right. The only concern I had is just to make sure that it's understood by the employees, whether we add the language or not, that if they even insinuate any sort of intimidation, even insinuation is considered intimidation. Potentially something like that be added at some point, but I think what's there covers what I need right now to make sure that we can discipline and do those appropriate things.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the board initially? Like to receive any input?
I'm always open.
Sir, you raised your hand?
I'm Randy Rittiger. The only comment I was going to make was brought up. You must have a permit to carry first.
Absolutely.
I know I was at the last meeting when you guys were discussing this, but just for the public knowledge, first you got to have the permit to carry. That was the only thing I was going to bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the board?
Lisa McNeil, District Court Administrator. I would like to ask that if you're going to consider this kind of a change, that you add not just in the courtrooms, but in any areas utilized by court employees and judges and jurors. We have juvenile court officers, we have clerk staff, we have court reporters, we have judges' offices where there's still a lot of interaction, and I think those areas should also be off limits to any carry. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, could you address you referred to legal counsel and as far as your particular wording?
Well, regarding the legal counsel, I am, and I know that you all have been apprised of that, I have taken that counsel regarding adding language about intimidation and harassment, as well as the idea of integrity, value, and respect. That particular section talking about courtrooms is not at the advice necessarily of legal counsel, but to say that I believe that the supervisory court order is applicable to courtrooms. I believe it becomes a very, very gray area when we start to make this nebulous and gray area of where a particular juror happens to go on any particular day and where that is. I think that almost makes it more confusing, and I think that that's not within what this board took action on, ceding the ground that the supervisory court order controls all 99 courthouses in total.
This addresses, though, the reason to have it concealed in the first place, too, doesn't it? I mean, whether it's jurors, potential. I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to have a be-all, end-all, perfect answer to everything, and I understand your concern completely, Lisa, but it was like the lady here last week asking Sheriff Drew for what guarantees do you have, that I'll be perfectly safe in your building. And I sat here thinking, what guarantees did JFK had when he was surrounded by Secret Service and cops back in '63? There is no perfect answer. There's no perfect everyday, safety, everything all day long. There's no guarantees on anything, and that's. But I would like to think that if we're dealing with this in the concealed manner, and I mean, I'd like to think that kind of covers those bases.
And I understand, and that's why I put in here, I understand that those within maybe our court system and judicial branch will say this doesn't go far enough. But I wanted to at least mention courtrooms are prohibited areas, and I know you all will say, well, of course, and this as well. I think that's a little bit of the dividing line, whether somebody has to be walking past a juror and all of a sudden that employee is unknowingly in violation. And I think that taking these steps is a good move. Courtrooms are prohibited, jail and juvenile detention. And if you're going to carry and be one of those, what I suspect are few employees that already have a permit that do legally, that they'll conceal it rather than open carry. That's really what I'm trying to get to in the narrow.
I appreciate that. Further comments? Welcome, Mr. Clausen.
Thank you. I didn't come down to speak to this. I should have been here last week, apparently. It took the county board between 2 and 4 years to come up with a plan that would work for the courthouse. And it's been going along quite smoothly. The legislature, in their wisdom, passed this with no common sense involved. Yeah, but I think you guys had an out. I think what the courts did was they allowed you to keep a ban in the courthouse unless you got sued. Well, now the sheriff, and I agree with David, this 100%, is not going to allow private citizens to carry into this courthouse. So how can you in good conscience allow your employees to carry concealed weapons in the courthouse? The workplace is not a place to carry guns. And it's way up on the list as far as where these instances happen is with employees in the workplace. So you're sitting here saying, well, we're going to say they have to abide by the rules and treat people with respect. Well, if you get an employee that goes over the edge, doesn't matter if he's got a gun in his pocket. So, as a citizen, I would prefer you keep the guns out of the courthouse, keep your employees safe. They've got, situations to deal with every day. And I was one of the last to come to the table as far as putting security in the courthouse. But they finally convinced me, and they were right. People shouldn't be carrying guns in a courtroom or in a courthouse. There's just too much aggravating situations here. So if I were you, I'd go back and stick with the ban, leave your courthouse security in place, and if you get sued, and you have to defend yourself. But I think the courts have given you an out. I don't know if you're grandfathered in. That's something you'd have to go to your legal counsel to find out. But like I say, I didn't come down here to speak. I just came down to see what was going on. I couldn't believe it when it passed. I mean, I've got no problem with guns rights, but put a little common sense with it. That's all I got to say.
Just a minute, you missed the place.
I'm sorry.
You missed the place, that's why you came down.
That's it.
And the place misses you.
This chair is really comfortable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the levity. Anyone else to address the board?
And it is heartening to hear Mr. Clausen agree with Dave Drew on something.
If anything's been good out of this.
Jackie Smith. I wasn't going to speak either, and actually, I did call up Dave, and I gave him kudos for implementing a policy of not allowing guns, and I agree with that. And that's kind of funny coming from me. I said, I am so happy that you are in charge of security, because if you remember way back when, I advocated for the supervisors to take it over, but I'm so glad he has it, and I think it's karma. You know, have you have you asked any of the employees what they feel about this? I cannot imagine what this is doing to your employee morale. I mean, I hear so many things on the streets, and it just seems like a mess. So I ask you to go back and reconsider it. And it's not worth it. For the few people that want to carry, to put everyone else, in a state of fear. And maybe it will get better as time goes on, but right now, let the courts figure it out, legislature figure it out. I just think that it's your responsibility. Their safety is all of your responsibility. And I think it was an unsafe act. So I know you're just revising the policy, you've already passed it. I expect you're not going to go back and change it. Typically that doesn't happen, but I wish you would. Just go back and rethink it. It's okay to say maybe too hasty. So I don't know how you enforce it either. How do you enforce this policy?
I think if somebody open carries, then they're in violation.
Wonder if it's concealed and they accidentally walk, let's say it's maintenance, and they go into the courtroom. They're in violation of it.
Absolutely. And that is not only violating the law, but that would be grounds for termination as well.
And who is going to enforce it?
I would think that our courthouse security, if somebody openly carried into a courtroom right now, just as if they would openly carry.
Concealed carry. I mean,
Well,
I just think it's hard to enforce if you don't know who has the gun.
But
And a
I thought you were
supervisor
talking
won't
about.
know either. How do you know if someone takes it out and puts it in their drawer? They could sneakily do that. So I just think there's so many issues with this that you haven't thought about. So once again, you rush to an answer without considering all of it, and I hope it works out.
If I may.
I'm done.
Are you willing to? Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
So just to give you some of the thoughts on enforceability, and you're right, and I appreciate your comments, because some of this, as with any policy, if there's violations of it, we will act. But just to hear some of the thoughts, if somebody came in and there were grounds that and evidence that person intimidated or harassed or put a leg up on a desk and said, "Hey, you know what I have here. You better not, mess with it." Those would all be spelled out here as signs, and our HR director would investigate. If somebody were to open carry rather than concealed carry with this, we would take actions. And we want to have this sort of language so we can say, you're no longer an employee here. And by the way, you probably have legal repercussions as well if you were to go into a courtroom. So I just want to give you some of that as far as.
Those are very obvious things, and I understand that those would be easy to take corrective action, terminate someone. But I just think you're opening yourself up for things that you don't know that are going to happen. I mean, someone gets mad. Lord knows there's enough reason to any given day, just watching the news before you get to work, and maybe stuff's going on personally. So they have their concealed weapon, and then the one day they go postal, it's too late. So that's not an enforcement issue, but that's just another issue. So I've gone and repeated it over and over, but I just think you want this, and you have not talked to your employees, and they're scared. And I just want you to think about it. Thank you.
Dave Drew, Sheriff. I just wanted to tell you that I visited with the other sheriffs in the major counties in Iowa, and no one changed their ban that was in place. Jeremy did call me, what day was that, Jeremy? Thursday? One day last week. And I appreciate the phone call, trying to come up with some situation that would make us both happy, and I offered to go ahead and place the ban in. I think we'd both be happy, but he wasn't moving on that. But he came up with the fact of open carry, and we agreed that it would be best to be concealed. I think it's probably the best practice. The thing that I wanted to say was that you can have that happen, just as you could change the other way too. And I know you're set, so I get that. But I would just let you know once again that fourth leading cause of death is workplace violence, homicide, and the number one cause of death for females is workplace violence. So, and I do echo the sentiments of Larry and Jackie, is that I think checking with the employees might have been. I know you don't lead and manage by surveying your employees, but it is valuable, because I did read a lot of emails thanking me for keeping the ban, and obviously we'll continue until that something takes place. The employee part, according to my attorney, I'm not allowed to cherry pick how the order works out, so I'm stuck with it. I don't like it, but I really understand your vote, and though I disagree, we'll keep it cordial.
Potabom?
I have one question, and I'm still learning this county stuff, so you have to bear with me a little bit. This is for all county employees. Do each of the elected officials make the policy for their employees, or do we, just for instance, let's say if Mr. Gill says, well, I'm not going to let my employees carry.
No,
Does he have that
this
right
would
to
be,
do that?
no.
Okay. Because I'm still getting used to not having department heads, but having elected officials in each position.
I mean, if we're taking action to change the employee handbook regarding all employees, I have never heard in my long tenured career, I have never heard that there can be a separate policy based on what the county attorney versus the treasurer versus the auditor would like to see happen. I believe it's within the purview of the Board of Supervisors to change.
Not under elected official. The sheriff has his own policy, and it can obviously ask Larry or Jackie. I can go against their policy. I did on a number of occasions. So as an elected official, they could make their own rule and say they can't carry. Just as the city of Sioux City has employees here, they say you can't, or the state says you can't. An elected official who has autonomy can have his own policy and directives and can say you won't carry here. But once again, the attorney will decide that. But I'm thinking I'm on pretty solid ground. And you can go by the Vestal report. That's always the best guide, the Vestal report, several pages long about dealing with county elected officials. You can Google it, it's there, but it'll help you.
And I would just say, for the sake, if there is an elected official who believes that that is the case otherwise and is going to do something other than what the Board of Supervisors said, that I would make sure that that is indeed the case.
And that's something I just thought of truthfully, and I thought, wait a minute, I am still learning this differences.
Dwayne Hoffmeyer, a judge here, Sioux City. I hadn't planned on speaking, but I came up because I got the impression that what I heard Supervisor Taylor say, that you drafted this language that is before this board today, and that it may differ from what your legal advice was. I'm working on some things, and I would just say that to try to get your employee handbook reconciled is going to be a delicate balance, and you should definitely be following your legal advice. The zero tolerance policy, workplace violence, weapons, you've touched on some. You have one that says you'll follow all court orders, which we know that this action went directly against it. That's in your policies. So I'm just saying, I don't think you should look at it as a comprehensive, and I think if you haven't gotten legal advice on how to resolve all of these issues, you should. I've done some research, and it's been happening out in Indiana. Use your custodian issue. He can't come to the courtroom. He puts his firearm in his desk. I think you just said that would be a violation. What does one expect a custodian with a firearm to do if he's going to come and work in the courtroom? So under that language, as I understood it, what you were looking at, that would be improper. So how is that helping clarify that situation? Also, it seems to me that some states or cities are looking at, will the insurance costs be adjusted because of OSHA claims? You may be subject to those. The liability, insurance, work comp may be increasing if you do some of these things. I just hope you've looked at all of them, and that's all I have to say.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to clarify that I did not say that we were not following legal advice. I was asked in a particular instance if one part of the motion that I was making had been at the consent or advice of legal counsel, and I was just clarifying that it wasn't. I believe that everything that we have looked at as far as intimidation, harassment, respect, and integrity, that those portions, and that's what I was clarifying, are at the counsel of legal advice. And when I was making reference to another particular part of the motion, I was saying that that wasn't from the genesis of that legal advice. So I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't want it implied that I was contradicting, which is not the case, any legal advice this board's been given. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak to the board? Any other comments from board members? Will the deputy auditor please call the roll?
First, Rocky Dewitt.
Aye.
Marty Potabom.
No.
Keith Radek.
Aye.
Jeremy Taylor.
Aye.
And Matthew Ong.
Aye. And the motion passes 4-1. Potabom opposed. Item 12 is the chairman's report. Item A is meeting of the U.S. 20 Association, July 14th I attended. Basically, there was nothing but good news at that meeting. The completion date is still expected to be November 1st, 2018. Bylaws were changed to reconfirm the officers throughout the end of the project. There were updates from communities in the construction zone. Financial update. The update there was that for the first time ever at those sort of meetings, there was never any talk of allocating funds to the project because they had all the money they need to carry the project through to completion. So, very good. They are, of course, planning their next meeting October 13th in Holstein and likely following plans for a celebration. Item B is a 2017 MERD special grant application for the Courthouse Centennial. I applied for that recently to the tune of $30,000. The minimum that you can be approved for is $25,000. The maximum is $250,000. Grants will be awarded September, end of September, and I do hope we're in good running for that because I believe the funds will be used for a critical purpose and what we've been planning for several months. With the next item, item C, the Historical Committee. Today I attended with Supervisor Taylor. We fleshed out some of the plans. We looked at some drafts of ideas as far as marketing. We're still committed to the May 1 through 5 date for the festivities, keeping with the themes for each day, allowing elected officials and others to give sort of a background and invite speakers, and Supervisor Taylor again chairs that committee if you have any follow-on comments.
There's some discussion of the Peter Franks study and the sub-basement column deterioration. I'd expect that that'd be coming before this board sooner rather than later, as it's structurally integral to the building. The only other thing, I think this meeting spoke to, we need subcommittee meetings and working groups because there's a lot that we're trying to take on. All very exciting, but a little long for that short of time. So more to come.
Indeed, more to come. Right, Kenny? Absolutely, says our Building Services Director. Okay, item 13 is reports on committee meetings. Item 14 is citizen concerns. Item 15 is board concerns.
I wanted to clarify something from last week when we were discussing the Sioux Rivers region. It wasn't Dennis that hadn't gotten information for me when I had requested it. It was at our meeting that we had out at Triview with one representative from each region, or each county, excuse me. And I had asked there, and the regional board staff said that they could get that information to me in an email. They still have yet to get it. So that's where I want to clarify, because I was in the car and lots of road noise, so I don't know what you guys heard or what was discussed after that.
I guess I don't know what to tell you. It's up follow-up.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Well, because I heard Dennis's name mentioned afterwards, and it wasn't something Dennis said he was going to get. It was the staff. So.
Okay.
Any other board concerns? We are adjourned. Already.